I'm Samantha, 28, and my hands are still shaking as I start to write this. 6 months ago, a family dinner shattered my world, but it also became the turning point that led me to discover my true strength. That fateful night, I sat across the polished oak table from my sister, Vivian. Her lips curled into a cold smile, and then she dropped the bombshell. You have 3 days to leave this house. Grandma's will states it now belongs to me. My parents, seated beside her, stared at the tablecloth, their silence a deafening confirmation of their complicity. I felt as if a knife had been plunged into my heart. How could they do this to me, especially after I'd lost my job and returned home, seeking their support? I grew up in a charming Victorian house in Boston, Massachusetts. The large front porch and the old, fashioned garden were the backdrop of my childhood. Grandma Rose was my haven in this sometimes competitive family. She'd take me to the garden every summer, teaching me the art of growing tulips. Tulips need love and patience, just like family, she'd say, her eyes twinkling with warmth. Until 4 months ago, I was thriving as an investment banker at Goldman Sachs. I was on the fast track to a promotion, but then the company downsized, and I found myself unemployed. Moving back home was supposed to be a temporary refuge, a place to regroup and find a new job. When I arrived, Mom, Linda, made my favorite chicken pot pie, and Dad, Robert, helped me carry my boxes to my old room. Stay as long as you need, Mom had said, but those words now seemed like a cruel lie. Vivian, 2 years younger than me, was always the calculating one. From the moment she could talk, she turned every situation into a competition. When I won the state debate championship at 14, she, accidentally, spilled coffee on my trophy. When I got into Harvard, she managed to make my parents' celebration about her new job offer. Vivian married Henry 3 years ago. Henry came from a wealthy real estate family, and their marriage was more of a business merger. Their wedding was featured in high society magazines, and Vivian would gleefully send me the clippings. Look at what we've achieved, she'd say, clearly excluding me. My parents always seemed to favor Vivian. They attended all her charity events, but missed my important work presentations. They proudly displayed her wedding photos, but kept my Harvard diploma in a drawer. Grandma Rose was different. She saw through Vivian's schemes and always supported me. You have a kind heart, Samantha, she'd whisper. Your sister may have the flash, but you have the substance. When Grandma passed away 3 months ago at 85, I felt like I'd lost my only ally. Looking back, I should have noticed the warning signs. A few weeks after I moved back, I'd overhear hushed conversations that stopped abruptly when I entered the room. Mail addressed to me started disappearing. Dad began avoiding eye contact during breakfast, and Vivian started visiting our parents more frequently, often when I was out job hunting. The day of the dinner, I received a text from Vivian. Important family dinner at 7. Formal. Mom spent the day nervously preparing Grandma Rose's special roast beef, a dish she only made for significant occasions. Dad was out all day and came back empty-handed. When I offered to help Mom, she flinched, as if I'd startled her. That afternoon, I noticed Grandma Rose's photo album had been moved. When I found it in Dad's study, several photos of us together were missing. I dismissed it as stress-induced paranoia, but I was so wrong. The dinner was a nightmare. The dining room was set with the finest china, creating an atmosphere of formality that only heightened my anxiety. Vivian arrived with Henry, dressed in a designer suit that looked more appropriate for a business meeting. Throughout the meal, the conversation was stilted. Dad talked about the weather with forced enthusiasm, and Mom kept getting up to check on the food. After dessert, Vivian placed her fork down and announced the news about the will. I stared at the envelope, unable to touch it. I looked at my parents, hoping for some sign of protest, but Dad was avoiding my gaze, and Mom's eyes were filled with tears, yet she remained silent. I felt dizzy and disoriented. How could you do this? I whispered. Henry interjected. It's all legal. The will has been verified. I turned to my parents. You knew about this? They remained silent, their silence a betrayal that cut deeper than any words. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my childhood bed, replaying the events of the dinner over and over again. Panic about my future set in. My bank account had barely enough money for a month's rent, and without a job, finding a new place to live seemed impossible. The next morning, I confronted my parents in the kitchen. Mom was making pancakes, her hands shaking. "How could you let this happen?" I asked, my voice raw from crying. Mom said, "We had no choice." Dad, dressed for his weekend golf game, said, "The will is legally binding." We consulted an attorney. I slammed my hand on the counter. "You could have stood up for me." But they just repeated that they had to follow Grandma's wishes. Later that day, I found a letter from Grandma Rose's old friend, Mrs. Thompson. She said she'd been trying to reach me since the funeral, but Mom had told her I wasn't taking calls. She suspected something was wrong with the will. Grandma had told her just weeks before she passed that she wanted me to have the house. I met Mrs. Thompson at a cozy cafe in downtown Boston. She told me that Grandma had updated her will to leave the house to me. But then a new lawyer, Mr. Carlton, started visiting Grandma regularly in her final weeks. Grandma seemed confused when Mrs. Thompson asked her about the change of lawyers. I did some research and found out that Mr. Carlton was an old friend of Henry's. I also discovered emails between Dad, Vivian, and Mr. Carlton discussing the revised estate plan. In a folder in Dad's study, I found Grandma's medical records, which showed that she was often disoriented and confused during the period when the new will was signed. I also found out that Vivian and Henry's real estate business was on the verge of bankruptcy. They needed the house as collateral for a loan. When I confronted my parents and Vivian with the evidence, there was a huge family showdown. Vivian exploded, saying it wasn't fair that I always got everything. I calmly pointed out that she had manipulated a dying woman to save her failing business. In the end, the truth came out. The court invalidated the fraudulent will, and Grandma Rose's original will, which left the house to me, was recognized. During the following months, I rebuilt my life. I found a new job at a smaller, ethical investment firm. The salary was lower, but it allowed me to work with integrity. I also started seeing a therapist, Dr. Harris, who helped me process the betrayal. My parents made tentative attempts at reconciliation. Dad brought me my favorite coffee one morning with a note saying he was sorry. Mom sent me texts checking on me. We agreed to meet at a park, and they explained that they were scared of losing their home and were pressured by Vivian and Henry. Vivian and Henry divorced. Vivian moved to a small apartment and started therapy. She reached out to me, and we had an honest conversation. She admitted that she'd been so focused on competing with me that she'd lost sight of what was truly important. 3 months after the confrontation, I hosted a small gathering in the newly renovated sunroom. As I looked around at my friends, new colleagues, and family, I felt a sense of peace. Just before the gathering, my friend Lucy found a letter from Grandma Rose hidden in an old book. In the letter, Grandma revealed that she'd set up a trust fund for me at a local bank with enough money to secure my future. She knew that there might be trouble after her passing, but she had faith in me to handle it. I realized that Grandma Rose had left me more than just a house. She'd left me the strength to stand up for myself and the wisdom to build a home based on love and integrity, no matter what challenges came my way. What would you do if your family betrayed you like mine did? Would you fight back or walk away? Share your thoughts in the comments below.